Take two. Hello. Hi, I'm Mish. Here are some books that I've read recently. The world, wow. So many things are happening. So many wild, outrageous, and scary things are happening. And it's so much. It's so much to hold. And at the same time, I am very lucky and very grateful to have a roof over my head and to have the capacity to do so many things that I love with people that I love. I get to go out and dance with all my friends and train and make art, which is so critical, so critical during this time. And I also get to read a lot of books, and so yeah, here are some books that I've read in the past few months. I think we're gonna touch on March, April, May, and we're halfway through June, so half of June as well. The first book that I read since the last time that I did one of these is Emma by Jane Austen. This copy I picked up from a shelf in my old apartment building. We used to have like a communal bookshelf where you could take some books, leave some books, kind of thing. Kind of like a little free library, and so I picked this up there, and so that's really nice. But this is my first Jane Austen novel that I've read. I'm very behind, I know. I definitely want to read more Jane Austen now. This book was okay for me. I think for a classic, it was very relatively approachable in its language, not as confusing as some other classics that I've read in the past. I also really understand like the charm of Emma and of Jane Austen novels in general. I definitely got that energy from this book, and I understand why people find it so charming. That being said, I wasn't super invested in this book the entire way through. It did drag a little bit for me. It felt a little bit slow. It wasn't the most engaging read for me, but I do definitely want to read more Jane Austen still. So that's the first one. After that, I read a book called She Weeps Each Time You're Born by Quan. I picked this book up at an event a couple years ago now, I think. I went to an author event with Ocean Vuong, and Quan was like the host who was interviewing him, and I wasn't familiar with her or her work before I went to that event, but I really enjoyed listening to the both of them speak, so I decided to pick up this book by her, and I'm really glad that I did. I finally got around to reading it this year, and I really enjoyed it. That being said, it was quite a heavy read. We follow a main character, her name is Rabbit, as she sort of grows up and experiences life within the context of Vietnam throughout the war periods. So the context of Rabbit's story is really just never-ending war, which is so heartbreaking, and also very real and very relevant, unfortunately. But I really enjoyed the way that this book was written. I think the storytelling was very unique. We sort of get bits and pieces of Vietnamese history sprinkled in throughout the telling of Rabbit's story and her life experiences. And it's also very beautifully written. It has some beautiful language in it. It's very poetic, very descriptive, and there are some hard-hitting lines. I tabbed some of them. Let me read you one. So again, the context of much of this book is war and fear and like running away and trying to stay alive and just coping and whatever ways you can. So on page 51 of this edition, she writes, "It was right for the others to defer to her. It was how she negotiated the world, how she'd lasted. If you showed any attachment to things, you risked the gods' wrath. It was best to act as if the objects closest to you were of no consequence. Indifference kept the pain from shattering you, when ordinarily you should have shattered." It just comes right from my chest, and it was so good. And I think this is a book that I've never heard anyone talk about. I hadn't heard about it before I went to this event, and so I would recommend, especially if you are like me, trying to diversify your reads even more. I would recommend. After that, I read this book, The Woman in the Dunes by Kobo Abe, translated by E. Dale Saunders, I believe is his name. Translated from the original, which was in Japanese. This book didn't really do it for me. I didn't really like it, honestly. I think this was a book that my boyfriend had for some time, and I don't think he's read it yet, but I decided to read it, and I don't know. The energy of the book was giving Murakami energy, Haruki Murakami, which makes sense because I think Murakami has been said to sort of admire and look up to this author. So that's that. I think the plot of this book intrigued me enough, so I kept going. I also don't really DNF books ever, so there's that also. But yeah, the plot was intriguing enough, but I honestly didn't give a single crap about the characters, which made it kind of difficult to get through this book. Luckily, it's not quite long. It's not super long. Wow, English. But yeah, it has a strong theme of existentialism and the meaning of life and, what is our purpose kind of thing, which I do enjoy, and I think about that all the time. So I liked that piece of it, but it's definitely not the strongest existentialist work that I've ever read. I also have in my notes that I did not understand the ending, but I honestly don't even remember what happened, so that's that. And then I read a nonfiction book called The Whole Picture by Alice Procter. This book was so good. I didn't have my sticky tabs with me when I read this book, and I wish that I did, because it just was so engaging and enlightening, and I learned so much, and I definitely want to read it again, and annotate it and go through and highlight things and sticky tab things that I want to come back to. But it was very, very informative. I think this book just goes to show how important context is, historical context is, global context is within art and within life in general. So yeah, go educate yourselves, go read this book, especially if you are an art lover, especially if you are a museum goer. This book really shifted my perspective, I think, when it comes to art in museums and how the art is displayed and everything like that. There are also pictures of some things you can see. So yeah, I would recommend for sure. After that, I read the Poppy War trilogy by R.F. Kuang. So that's the Poppy War, the Dragon Republic, and the Burning God. I read them on my Kobo. I love my Kobo so much. This series, I have mixed feelings about it. Yeah, I don't even really know what to say. The Poppy War, the first book, was just okay in my opinion. I thought it was interesting. I do think that she had some really good ideas, but a lot of it to me felt underdeveloped. I wanted to see some of those ideas fleshed out more. yeah. That being said, though, I do appreciate the tie-in of Chinese culture and Chinese history, because we don't see that a lot in literature. And so, yeah, I liked it for that reason. And also, she wrote it when she was so young, right? Like 15 or 16 years old or something like that. And I wasn't writing novels at that age, so I guess I can't really complain about the development of the story arc that much. But I liked the story enough to continue the series, and I read yeah, okay. Anyways, I liked it enough to continue the series, and I'm glad I did because book 2 was my favorite book of the trilogy, so I'm glad I read that one. The Dragon Republic, in my opinion, was the strongest in its writing and also in its character development. I feel like I really cared about the entire cast of characters in book 2. Book 3, however, for me, felt a little bit unnecessary. I read it just to read it, just to finish the series. I really didn't like the ending, and I feel like rather than character development, we got some character regression, if you will, which is fine, I guess. That happens sometimes. That's a valid character arc, and also it just didn't do it for me. But overall, I would recommend, especially if you are interested in like high grimdark fantasy stories, I think you would enjoy it. And also if you are interested in gaining some exposure to Chinese culture and Chinese history, because these books are in a way inspired by the Chinese civil wars back in the day. So that's that. After that series, I needed a book from English. After reading that series, I needed a break from genre fiction, and so I read The Housekeeper and the Professor by Yoko Ogawa and translated by Stephen Snyder from Japanese originally. This is the sweetest book I have ever read. I would recommend it to everybody. I loved it so much. There's definitely a found family trope, which is my favorite trope, as I'm coming to learn. And it's just so sweet. And I was engaged the whole time, even though it's not a very plot or action heavy book. It's definitely very character driven, but I just loved the characters so much. I felt like they were my best friends, and I couldn't wait to go hang out with them every day in this little book. Yeah, there's a quote on the back from an author, and it says, "I've been telling everyone about this book. It's a story about love, which is quite different from a love story. It's one of the most beautiful novels." And I think that quote about it being a story about love is just so accurate. And that's what the world needs so much of right now, is more stories about love. And I think everyone should go read this book, because we need more of the compassion that this book just exudes. Yeah. Okay. That's that. After that, I read this book. It's called Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Z. Brite, which is a pen name of Billy Martin. This book, I don't really know what to say about this book. I don't even know how to talk about it without like getting flagged or something, because it's so violent and disturbing. And I think that I watch a lot of booktube and people talk about dark things a lot. I don't think it would be a problem. And also this just like I don't even know. But I saw this book at the bookstore in like a staff picks / staff recommendation section, and I love to look at those sections always. And I've never seen this book recommended by a bookseller before, and so I was curious about it. It caught my eye. I read the back, I did some research about it, and it wouldn't ordinarily have been a book that I would have picked up for myself. However, I am doing the Storygraph genre challenge for this year, and one of the genres on that challenge is queer horror, and this technically falls under that umbrella. So that is really the main reason why I picked it up and read it. Now, having read it, I would say that this is definitely more crime fiction, maybe thriller. Definitely crime fiction. It's less horror. As someone who whose boyfriend loves Stephen King, who also really likes Stephen King, Stephen King horror novels like make my heart beat out of my chest. This one didn't have that effect. However, it did make me want to vomit on multiple occasions because it is just so grotesque and vile and graphic. So I definitely would not recommend this book to anyone personally. That being said, it's also not a bad book, and I do think that it would have a niche appeal to a certain subset of people. Yeah, the disturbing things that happen in this book also happen within the broader context of the beginnings of the AIDS epidemic, which is, of course, so important to acknowledge and talk about, and also so heartbreaking. So there's that as well. So I really don't know how to feel about this book. I gave it a solid 3-star. Just like average for me. Yeah, again, it wasn't a bad book, and also I wouldn't recommend it because it is so grotesque and graphic, and also contains some things that I'm sure would be trigger warnings for some people, so note that. Yeah, okay, that's all I really have to say about that. And then the last book that I finished was I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman, translated by Roz Schwartz. I really enjoyed this book. This book has been making waves in the booktube and book talk spaces in the past year or so. I've heard some conflicting things about it. I feel a lot of people don't really vibe with this story, but I really enjoyed it. It's dystopian, and it, similar to The Woman in the Dunes, has a strong theme of existentialism and explores the question of like, what does it mean to be alive versus what does it mean to have a life? Because those are two very different things, as this book kind of explores. And yeah, I really like this book. It made me think a lot. I think I will be thinking about this book for a long time, and I would definitely reread it. I want to like annotate it. I almost like want to write a paper on it. That's like how this book makes me feel, but like in a good way. Yeah, the writing is really beautiful. Also, the translation is really stellar. And yeah. Okay, that's all the books that I have read in the past few months or so. I have started a new book, but I won't talk about that right now. Yeah, keep reading. The world is like, I don't even really have words to describe all that is happening in the world because there is so much. And also, if we are lucky enough to have the capacity to dive into literature and get lost in a different world, then we should do that. We should not take it for granted, but we should do that. Reading is so important. We also learn so much from the books that we read, whether they are nonfiction or not. So earlier I was talking about context. When you read a book, consider it in the context of the today, and think about how it is relevant to all the things that we are experiencing today. And then also think about how all the different things from our collective histories have led to where we are now today. I think that reading and words and books are just so powerful in making us think and be critical and analytical about the world. And yeah, I think books again also have the capacity to foster a sense of like compassion and care and understanding for people who come from different communities and cultures and backgrounds. And so we should all, I think, try to diversify our reads as much as we can, especially as we move forward into the context that is today, the world today. And yeah, spread love, spread love, spread love. We move forward somehow together in community. Okay, that's all. Happy reading.